Good morning, everybody. 2022, we're stepping into, as spiritual community, health and well-being as an initiative this year. It's in all sorts of our programming and unique programming as well. I get to actually fill in for Reverend Simon today at 11:30 a.m. I might be a couple minutes late because I like to say hi to as many people as possible, but it's just online. So if you're watching at home or you get home quickly, we'll be talking an hour or so about emotional balance and in particular setting healthy boundaries in our relationships. And it's not too late to join a winter class. What a great spiritual gift to give to yourself for health and well-being. Dr. Michelle's starting a financial freedom class this week. Dr. Patty's going to be teaching practical mysticism online. Reverend Zamira on Tuesday mornings here on campus is teaching spiritual practices, and it's not too late to join my Beyond Limits class online on Tuesdays or Barry's Friday morning self-mastery. I know that's a lot, but there's some great choices, a great variety, and great teachers, huh? Yeah. So grateful to be continuing our Back to Basics series this week, Vibrant Spiritual Living. And one of the things I love about our religious science and science of mind teaching is, like good scientists, we're driven by great questions. You know, we're very much an interfaith church here, but where I would differentiate us from religion in general is fundamentalism. You know, that type of energy that says just accept the doctrine and don't ask any questions. We're all about good questions, and the faith that doesn't question, we believe, doesn't grow. The faith that doesn't question doesn't grow. It doesn't mean, it can be very unhealthy to be a contrarian, a doubter, a pessimist, but ask good questions. Someone that was influential on me in my upbringing, he was actually a comic strip character created by Matt Groening, known as Bongo Bunny. Isn't that a great name? There's Bongo, young, mischievous, and full of questions. He would later evolve into Bart Simpson by Matt Groening, and so the comic strip was called Life in Hell. And one of my favorite strips is Bongo's questions about death. When you go to heaven, do you look like how you did when you died? I hope I'm better looking when I go. If your leg gets amputated during your life, is it waiting for you in heaven? Great question. If cats are bad, do they go to cat hell? Yeah, duh. Of course they do. Are there cavemen in heaven? If I got to heaven, will I have any friends? Won't eternity get kind of boring after a little while? And my personal favorite, will I go to hell for asking these questions? And the science of mind and spirit, the whole philosophy, is born out of a single question. The whole science of mind textbook is built around a singular question. And the question is, why are some people's prayers answered and some people's prayers not? Why are some prayers answered and some not? Is it because prayer is a make-believe exercise? We answer, no to that question. We believe that prayer works. Is it because God favors some and not others? Does he answer your prayers based upon what religion you are, or what race you are, or what nationality you are? And we don't like that one either. We say no to that. And so Holmes tells us that it must have something to do with the mind of the person praying. That answered prayer must be the result of the conviction, the clarity, and the groundedness of the person that's praying. There must be this creative medium of intelligence that's all around us that naturally and organically responds to our thinking. Holmes puts it this way. He says, perhaps the simplest way to state the proposition is to say that we are surrounded by a mind or intelligence that knows everything, that the potential knowledge of all things exists in this mind, that the abstract essence of beauty, truth, and wisdom coexists in the mind of the universe, that we also exist in it and may draw from it. But what we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. A unity must be established and a conscious connection must be made before we can derive the benefits which the greater mind is willing to reveal or impart to us. So there it is. There's our answer. We just let it go now, right? No. Keep asking questions. There's always great questions about prayer. Can I backtrack a prayer? You ever have that? Someone asks you to pray for Linda's surgery on Tuesday, and on Sunday, and then you wake up Wednesday and realize you forgot? Backtrack that prayer. Why not? Still pray. A really good question in relationship to this one is, if answered prayer is based upon the mind of the person praying, what about when I'm praying for someone else? Can my mind demonstrate for them, or do they have to have a conviction, receptivity in their consciousness to work? And universally, I think we'd answer their consciousness has something to do with it, but there's this place, see, where we can connect in divine mind and intelligence and think as one, and incredible demonstrations can happen. These questions go on and on as we continue through our lives. There's a mantra we like to use in Science of Mind. There is one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is your life. That life is my life now. There is one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is your life. That life is my life now. And I've shortened it today. I've condensed it. One life. God's life. My life now. Say it with me if you choose. One life. God's life, my life now. And it's one thing to say that and to theorize it. It's another to really center yourself in it. One life. There is a primordial essence which binds us all to this universe that created us. It is the essence of life itself. It expresses in and through all beings, even those of us who forget we're a part of our one life, cannot be separated from this essence. Feel that. One life. God's life. What is God's life? It is the expression of this one life in all of its forms. It is a presence that surrounds us of infinite wisdom, infinite knowingness, infinite love, infinite potentiality. It is the very essence of the highest being, and it belongs and expresses through you and through me. God's life. My life now. My life now. What does that mean? It means now that I feel a sense of this one life, now that I know and recognize God's life, now I can see. Now I can look into my life and have reverence for it and practice this spirit and see it in others and have a mystical experience. Join me for a moment, if you would, by imagining the city of our everyday consciousness. Our everyday consciousness is very busy, just like a city. And it's filled with houses and buildings and neighborhoods, and these all represent our relationships and our work and our hobbies and all the stuff that we do. And there's streets and electric lights, and sometimes there's a lot of traffic on the streets, and we feel out of the flow, and the lights are on all the time that it doesn't seem we can ever turn them off and relax. It gets very busy in this city. And when there's a lot of traffic, we remember that there's sewers and there's back alleys and there's all these rules and regulations, sometimes self-imposed, and they represent sometimes our limited thinking, where we're holding ourselves back. There's so much hustle and bustle, and sometimes the trash crowds on the street corner while we're waiting for the trash people to come, and it's so busy, but we can begin to take our consciousness and begin to rise above it. We can begin to view this city of our everyday consciousness from a higher perspective. And the higher you go, you begin to see, oh, I never quite noticed how that house connects with this neighborhood over there. I never quite realized that there's this little turnoff over here where I can get some rest and some respite. I never quite saw how that law, that rule and regulation I've been putting on myself is holding me back from fulfilling my life's purpose. And boy, I tell you, when I'm in the mix of my city, I'm not grateful for much, but when I see it from a higher standpoint, from a panoramic view, I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for the city of my life and these blessings I get. And as you go higher and higher, all of a sudden, you find yourself on this mountaintop. this mountaintop of spirit, this place where heaven and earth touch within you and you experience what the mystics have called the grace of God. One life, God's life, my life now. One life, God's life, my life now. And we're touched by the infinite, and it's then that we can see. Holmes tells us when you give a spiritual treatment, you are doing something that is out of the ordinary. You are introducing the spiritual equivalent into mental conditions which produce physical effects. All that means to say is you start heading down that mountain, you take the consciousness that you gained on that mountain with you. And the traffic starts to lighten up. And your neighborhood gets cleaner. And you start to remember what's most important to you. And you stop just saying you love your loved ones, and you start loving them a little bit more. And you just stop saying, I'm grateful for your life. And you bring a consciousness of blessing into it. And it's so powerful, this gift of a prayerful consciousness. It's like building an extra layer of awareness in your life that gives you all the tools and the essence you need to co-create your life with the infinite. Go to this mountaintop daily and remember, the deeper you go, the higher you climb. The deeper you go, the higher you climb, the more your life can be lived not from a fractured, but a whole perspective. Not from a fractured, but a whole perspective. I'd like to distinguish with you this morning, if I can, two types of prayerfulness in the Science of Mind teaching. The first, I'll just call prayerfulness, and it has to do with this everyday consciousness of ours. It's what Dr. Barry would refer to as what we're thinking about, right? Because whatever we're thinking about in Science of Mind, since we live in this creative medium, everything that we're thinking about has a tinge of creativity to it. It's all creative. So if I spend 5 hours a day watching cable news, I'm contributing to wildness, wackiness. If I'm too caught up in being in judgment about someone or having a story about someone that's doing something wrong, if I'm consistently rejecting myself and not liking myself, if I'm only focused on the problems and what's destitute in my life, I can't help but keep growing that and expanding that. But when I can begin to focus on what matters most to me, on being my true self, on loving the people that I love, on making my church and my city and my country a better place through optimism, without pessimism, but without any illusions, what I'm thinking about, it begins to have this momentum, and life starts to move along with it in an incredible way. So that's just one aspect of prayer, what we're thinking about. It's what we're thinking about. But there's this other sort of prayer. We might call it a capital P prayer. And this is that prayer that happens when we connect with the infinite within ourselves. It's one life, God's life, my life, now. And this spiritual knowing, this mountaintop that we have the gift of climbing when we go deeper within, can give us the ability to see, to know, to understand, to experience ourselves connected with our divinity that allows us to see our lives clearly and truly, and therefore to live them more abundantly with clarity and well-being. And I just want to share with you today 3 lessons that I've learned from this type of prayer. And the first, it's a little complex, but hear me out. And what I want to say is the history of prayer in your life is God's autobiography in your life, where you look back at those places you prayed, and maybe you didn't call it a prayer, maybe it was a wish or an intention or just a heart's desire that was cultivating in you. That's God's story in your life. Because in what we're thinking about prayer, we can pray for what we want. We can pray for demonstrations. But there's something about this mountaintop prayer that recognizes, as much as I know or I think I know what I want, there's something out there. There's this creative intelligence that knows what I want perhaps better than I do. And we can co-create something really powerful together. I remember it was 2010. I was in San Diego, California. It was late Sunday afternoon, and I was at a bar, and I had a beer. Okay, it was 3 beers, and I was standing outside, and the sun was about to set. And I said to myself, Josh, you could be doing something more constructive with your free time. Josh, you could be doing something more constructive with your free time. And have you ever thought something in your head and worried you were getting eavesdropped on? See, the universe was listening. And it wasn't within 2 weeks of that, I was in conversations to take over our center in Seal Beach, California. And my friend April, who lived in Las Vegas, had made a decision that she and her 4-year-old son, Gavin, were going to move to Long Beach, California, which is adjacent to Seal Beach, California. And so as I was getting the job, I would commute the hour or so from San Diego to Seal Beach. And sometimes I'd stay with my friend April. And there was this kid. There was this kid there. And when he'd talk, but even more so, when he'd laugh or when he'd cry, it was like this electric surge in my heart. It was like the scar tissue was getting eaten away, and it was actually almost painful because my heart was being born open, and there was a simple calling, a simple message. Love this boy. Love this boy. Just love this kid. That's all you have to do. And it was a great constructive use of free time. And it was really magical because I had a growing relationship with who is now my wife, April. But my relationship with Gavin was so independent of that. It was so unique that we got to grow up together. And even though I was giving my time, the real gift was this child in my life who began to give me a consciousness in a greater way of what family was. Something that I was not telling God I wanted. Or marriage was, and eventually we would all move in together, and the kid was about 9 years old, and he sat down and he said, Josh, is it okay if I start calling you Dad now? What a gift. And here's this 9-year-old kid who for 4 years had just been calling me Josh, never called me Josh since. Isn't that a powerful commitment? I thought when he grew older in teenage years, he would call me different names, but not even that has happened, right? What a gift from a creative intention. And I was so grateful just a few months ago. It's a very long story, but I was finally able to legally adopt Gavin. So I officially get to call him my son. Here he is, elbow bumping with the judge. Which is a great thing. And that's what I would want Gavin to know, which is what I want you to know about the relationships in your life too. And that is, Gavin, if you, wherever you're at in your life, whatever may be going on in your future years, and you wonder if you made a difference to someone, you made a difference to me. And I love you. Yeah. Holmes tells us prayer is not an act of overcoming God's reluctance, but should be an active acceptance of his highest willingness. There is a willingness of the Spirit that's in your life that wants to unleash its power of creativity. It can't do it alone. You have to help it. You have to open up for it. You have to be willing to step into it, even when it's scary and vulnerable and too intimate. And did I really want this? Yes, you do. Step into that creative life and realize that your prayer life is God's story in your life. It's the greatest story ever told, and it's ready to demonstrate for you. The second lesson that I've learned about prayer, capital P prayer, is that in reality, it's not about getting what you want. It's about more profoundly becoming who you are. True prayer isn't really about getting what you want. It's wonderful when we do, and pray for stuff that's just fine. Pray for demonstrations. But it's really about becoming who you really are. And the trick is when you do that, everything else falls into line. The byproduct of that is the blessings and the abundance and the healing and the wonder of life. This question, why are some people's prayers answered and not? There's a problem with it. And the problem arises when we ask the question, what if someone's consciousness is pristine and they're full of conviction and clarity and their prayer isn't answered? Right? Some of the most wonderful people I know, of the most pristine and beautiful spiritual consciousness mentors in my life, I've had the honor of being a part of holding their hand and rubbing their skin as they've passed away from cancer, right? Or they've had to walk through a difficult tragedy in their lives. So that doesn't work for me, right? However, that question has helped me understand the truer meaning of prayer. Again, there are healings. Don't get me wrong. There are healings and demonstrations and wonderful things that happen because of prayer all the time. And yet, what I know about these people is that their prayer life just deepened. And they became that much more abundantly who they were, even in the midst of challenge, even in the midst of drama, even in the midst of having to let go of their own mortal coils. There was that beauty of consciousness. And that's what being on that mountaintop of faith can bring us. Prayer, you see, when you really have prayer down, in my experience, it's like the most intimate form of communication. Prayer is the most intimate form of communication I know of. I have the honor of being a part of our practitioner training here at Mile High Church, and my favorite thing is when a practitioner finds her own voice. You know, we all come in there at first and we're like, oh my God, I got to try to sound like Dr. Patty, which is never going to happen, you know, and we're all trying to pray the way we think we're supposed to. But then you begin to hear this voice, and for me, it's like a telling of a divine secret, right? A divine secret is that truth we know so deep within us about the good of ourselves and of life that we're sometimes afraid to tell it, right? And when we speak it, and when we know it, and when we share that voice, it can be a little scary because it is like being spiritually naked, right? It's being vulnerable. It's opening up to the connection that we have with Spirit within us, and it's looking from that mountaintop down on the experiences of our life, and it's knowing the truth. It's beholding the truth. And so see prayer not as a magic trick to demonstrate your desires, as magical as it is, but see it as the vehicle that allows you to see yourself truly, to speak your word emphatically, and to become that which you are. Become that which you are. Lastly, prayer has taught me that the prayer is the answer. That the prayer is the answer. As much as I love the demonstrations, the prayer is really the answer. As much as I may tell God or say to myself, this is what I want to have happen, what I've often learned is that by being on that mountaintop of spiritual consciousness, that the answer to the prayer is right there, because the answer is to be able to see. It's be able to know. It's the ability to accept myself, as difficult as that may be at times, in a divine embrace, and to take that embrace with me and work it into the context of my life. My favorite quote on prayer comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, the 19th century American intellectual who was the main philosophical and spiritual influence on Ernest Holmes. He said, prayer that craves a particular commodity, anything less than all good, is vicious. Prayer is the contemplation of the facts of life from the highest point of view. It is the soliloquy of a beholding and jubilant soul. It is the Spirit of God pronouncing His works good. What does it mean to contemplate your life from the highest point of view? What does it mean to contemplate your life from the highest point of view? Oh, she really ticks me off sometimes, but I love her. You know, this is really challenging right now, but I'm glad I'm in the mix, right? When we can have that panoramic view, that consciousness that sees things from the light of divinity and our highest truth versus our self-rejection and inner struggles, we begin to unfurl. We begin to remove those aspects of our consciousness that are holding our lives back from success or healing or love. And we begin to allow that very vision of being in a prayerful consciousness to weave itself into the very fabric, nook and cranny, every aspect of our lives. And it's like a seed bed for divine growth It's a seed bed for divine blessings. It's a seed bed for what's best in your soul to come out and dynamically embrace your life as the vibrant, co-creative, intelligent, grace-filled life that it is. The truth is it will always be there, but to be true in our experience, we have to contemplate it, we have to cultivate it, and we have to allow it to become the very truth of who we are. So just taking this into prayer today, let us move back to the very basics of our heart, the very basics of that foundation for our spiritual being. And I know as we connect with this divine truth that it already has everything that we need. And it opens our eyes so that we can see. It opens our hearts so that we can truly feel. It opens every pore on our skin so that we can truly feel the animating, vibrant, one life of God. Recognizing that we live in the midst of an infinite intelligence, may we allow this intelligence to fill our very life, to be embodied in our being, and through self-acceptance, through the courage to be honest and authentic, and with a divine willingness to grow, I know that the byproduct of this for each of us is a richer life, is healing in body and in relationships, is a clarity of mind that allows us to recharge even in the midst of busy or overwhelming experiences. This Spirit gives us all we need to have that disposition that suits our heart best, that allows us to live fervently and transparently to that divine gift we have each been blessed with. May we continue to allow God's story, God's truth, to express itself in our lives, to show up as miracles, healings once again, and with that rich experience that reminds us we are one, that there is one life. It is God's life. It is my life now. And so it is.